Hello, this is old Mr. Kent of MrKent.com, and this is part 2 of a two-part video set about going from Spokane, Washington, leaving very early in the morning, and flying over to polish my brother's plane in Renton, Washington, which is about a 2-hour flight. And so to get all the details, you really need to watch the first video, part 1. But in part 2, because what I went over there on Father's Day, and I worked all day polishing my brother's plane, and then I was very tired in the evening, and so I still had more to go. So I packed everything up and flew up to the Snohomish Airport, which has a big grass area, grass landing strip, and so forth. And I had my steak dinner and everything, and so that's where I left off at the last video. But I'm leaving out a whole bunch of details about flying early in the morning. So I had my steak dinner, and then I called my wife and I told her everything was going fine. And this was before cell phones, and so I went out to my plane, opened both doors because it had been a hot day, and I crawled into the back seat and took my shoes off because my shoes and socks were all wet from when I washed the plane. And so I had a Cessna 170, which is a tail dragger. So when you get in the back seat, you're really leaning back. And so the front seats, they lean forward so people can get in. So I leaned them both forward, and then I took my wet feet with the wet socks on them, and I propped them up, and then I kind of sat in the back seat, just kind of slouched down, and in a comfortable position, and so I could just enjoy the evening, because it was only about 8 o'clock or so, and like it was Father's Day, and everybody was treating their dad to special things at the airport. And so I remember as I sat there, I could look out the right rear window, and out there they had tethered a hot air balloon, and they were giving people rides in a hot air balloon, which it only went up probably 100 feet or so, and then they brought it down, and so you could watch the people do that, and I laid there and looked at that. And then out my left window, they had a whole bunch of skydivers coming down on the airport, not all at once, but as the minutes went by, more would come down, and they had aerobatic flights going on. It was just a real active day. And of course, airplanes were parked everywhere, and people were walking around looking at everybody's plane, and I didn't care if they looked in mine. I had my doors open on both sides and had my feet propped up, and they'd walk by. I don't know what they must have thought, but they'd walk by, and so I was just enjoying myself. And then the next thing I knew, I was waking up and it was pitch black. I looked at my watch and it was 11 o'clock. So I must have been so tired that when I was just sitting there looking out the windows and stuff, I fell asleep. And of course I fell asleep when it was still light and when there were people still walking around the airport. And they walked by my plane, and here's this old guy. I wasn't that old then. But anyway, here's this old guy. He's in the back seat with his feet up, snoring and falling, sleeping away with no shoes on. But anyway, so I went to sleep. I woke up, and it was dark, about 11 o'clock. And so I got out of the plane, and I had brought my sleeping bag. So I rolled it out underneath the fuselage and closed the doors, and I remember laying there looking across the field, laying on my side, and I went back to sleep again. Somewhere around 6 o'clock or so in the morning, I woke up, and everything was covered with dew. I mean, the grass was wet, my sleeping bag was wet, and it had been a really warm day before, and so there's a lot of dew in the air. So anyway, I got up and started cleaning up everything. I had to wipe off my windshield several times, and I intended to go have breakfast in that little restaurant that I spoke of in the last video, It said on the door they opened at 7 o'clock. So about 10 minutes to 7, I walked over there, and I had to walk across the field and everything, and got over there, and it wasn't open. And so I waited till after 7, and it wasn't open. And of course, it was Father's Day weekend, and this was Sunday, and I suppose they open later on Sundays, especially on Father's Day weekend. So I didn't have any breakfast, so I thought, all right, I'm just going to fly back down to Renton, and where my brother's plane is parked, and finish polishing, because I hadn't done the tail section yet. So it was everything was wet and cold, and started my plane up and taxied around, and I just took off on the paved strip and climbed up to probably 3,000-4,000 feet and headed south back to the Renton Airport. I got to the Renton Airport and landed, and went back to work and finished the tail. Got that all polished up. And by the way, I shaved myself looking at my reflection in the side of my plane, because it was polished aluminum. And I shaved myself, and I think I went to the candy machine and bought me some breakfast candy bars. Anyway, so I got that all done, packed up, and I flew home through the Cascade Mountains. And the interesting thing was I had never done it before, when there was lightning strikes on both sides of me hitting the tops of the mountains. But anyway, so I flew on through, and then over at Ephrata they were having sailplane contests, or just a whole bunch of people flying sailplanes. And like an idiot, I didn't know that, so I flew through them, and had to be real careful about that. But anyway, I got home and everything was done, and my brother had a nice polished airplane that he could go fly. So I want to also take time to read you a poem. Now, my poems are this is kind of a corny one, so be ready. All right, this is called "Oh, It's You." They tell me there's a story of the day when I was born. It's related to the reason that I now feel so forlorn. Just a brand new baby boy, all bundled up in blue. When my parents first looked at me, they said, "Oh, it's you." All my life I've had this problem. It was terrible in school. Seems all the other children forgot the golden rule. And even all my teachers, they forgot about it too, 'cause every morning I was greeted with a hearty, "Oh, it's you." The doctor says I have a complex. There's nothing he can do. A psychological disorder with a mental age of 2? He's never had a patient like me. He's confused as what to do. And when I walk into his office, he begins with, "Oh, it's you." I've always tried to grin and bear it, though it happens every day. It's tough to get up in the morning knowing what the world will say. On all the jobs I've ever held, and I've been fired from quite a few, I've had to put up with a boss who starts each day with, "Oh, it's you." The other night, when I was dreaming, I went to heaven when I died. As I approached those pearly gates, I couldn't wait to get inside. I could hear the angels singing, and with heaven's host as I stepped through. Then suddenly a silence fell, and they all said, "Oh, it's you." So the moral of the story is, if you like to lose a friend, you don't have to call him nasty names to make the friendship end. Just wait until he comes around. It only takes a time or two. As he walks up to you with a big old smile, say calmly, "Oh, it's you." All right, well, with that, I want to thank you for watching my videos. Check out the part 1, because you might enjoy it. But thanks for watching, and God bless.